Episode 1, The Accidental Encounter. A single glance, and everything changed. The storm hit London without warning. Thunder rolled somewhere above the city, and rain poured down like the sky itself had cracked open. Emma pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as she hurried across the crowded street, clutching her notebook, the one with all her sketches, her secret thoughts, and her plans for a life she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. She hated days like this. She hated the noise, the rush, the feeling that everyone else knew where they were going while she didn't. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. Someone slammed into her hard enough to make her lose balance. Her notebook slipped from her fingers, hit the wet pavement, and skidded straight into a puddle. "Watch where you're," Emma started, but stopped when her eyes met his. Blue, deep, electric, like lightning caught in human form. The stranger crouched down, picking up her soaked notebook, his wet hair plastered against his forehead. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice low and warm, carrying just enough guilt to sound genuine. "I wasn't looking where I was going." Emma opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. Something about him, the way he looked at her like she was the only person on the street, the intensity in his gaze, froze her in place. "It's fine," she managed finally, taking the notebook from his hands. "Just another perfect Monday, right?" A smile tugged at the corner of his lips, not a full smile, just enough to make her heartbeat skip once. "Let me make it up to you," he said, glancing across the street. "Coffee? My treat." Emma hesitated. Normally, she'd say no. Strangers and spontaneous decisions weren't her thing, but there was something about him, something magnetic, dangerous even, that made her nod. "Okay," she said, surprising herself. The coffee shop smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. Outside, the rain turned into a curtain of silver, trapping them inside together. "I'm Daniel," he said, setting 2 mugs on the table. "Emma." He leaned back, studying her. "You don't seem like someone who enjoys Mondays." "I don't," she admitted, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "I'm an illustrator. Deadlines and rainy mornings don't mix well." "An artist?" He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So you create worlds on paper?" "And you?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, just for a second, too short for most people to notice, but she caught it. "I do consulting," he said finally. "Finance stuff. Pretty boring, actually." Emma didn't believe him. Something in his tone was off, like he'd rehearsed that line before. Before she could press him, the lights in the cafe flickered, then the thunder cracked again, so loud it rattled the windows. A group of people gasped. Daniel's hand twitched. He looked toward the street like he expected something, or someone. "You okay?" Emma asked softly. "Yeah," he said quickly, forcing a smile, "just not a fan of storms." But she knew there was more to it. An hour later, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Daniel walked her outside, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. They stood at the corner, neither wanting to say goodbye just yet. Then, across the street, a black car pulled up. Its windows were tinted, the engine idling low and smooth. Emma barely noticed it, but Daniel did. His entire body went rigid. "Daniel?" she asked, frowning. He blinked, forcing a calm expression. "Nothing, just—" "I should get going." Before she could ask more, he squeezed her hand lightly, a touch both gentle and urgent, and walked away quickly, disappearing into the crowd. Emma stood there, stunned, clutching her damp notebook. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the meeting, the half smiles, the way his voice cracked when thunder rolled. Who was he, and why did a stranger make her feel like her life had just changed forever? Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. "Unknown number, don't trust him." Emma froze. Her heart pounded in her ears as another message came through. "Unknown number, stay away from Daniel if you want to be safe. She stared at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant, but closing in. Episode 2, Secrets of the Past. One message, and the past came rushing back. Emma barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's half-smile, heard the low rumble of thunder, and stared at those two chilling messages again and again. Don't trust him. Stay away from Daniel if you want to be safe. By sunrise, she'd convinced herself it was some kind of prank, maybe a wrong number, maybe someone jealous, but deep down, something told her this wasn't random. The next afternoon, Emma walked into her favorite cafe, hoping to find Daniel there, and he was sitting in their usual corner, a coffee untouched in front of him, scrolling through his phone. She hesitated, watching him. His jaw was tense, his movements sharp. He wasn't the calm, confident man she'd met yesterday. Something had changed. "Daniel," she said finally. He looked up, and his entire face softened. "Emma." For a moment, it felt like yesterday never happened until she slid into the chair opposite him and blurted, "Someone's texting me about you." His smile faded instantly. "What did they say?" "That I shouldn't trust you, that I should stay away if I want to be safe." He stared at her, silent, his fingers tapped against the table, slow, deliberate. "You shouldn't have replied," he said finally. "I didn't reply," Emma whispered harshly. "Daniel, what is going on?" He hesitated, as if weighing whether to tell her the truth. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I wasn't completely honest with you," he admitted. "I don't just do consulting. I left New York a year ago because I got involved with people I shouldn't have." Emma's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the door to the cafe opened, and a man in a dark coat walked in. Tall, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, he scanned the room quickly and locked his gaze on Daniel. Daniel's reaction was instant. His entire body went rigid, his knuckles white around his mug. "Emma," he said quietly, "I need you to leave, now." "Daniel, please." Something in his tone, urgent, pleading, almost desperate, made her obey. Outside, the drizzle had turned into heavy rain again. Emma ducked under an awning and watched through the glass as the stranger walked up to Daniel's table. They talked. No, argued Star. Daniel's face was pale, the man's expression cold and unforgiving. At one point, Daniel slammed his hand against the table, making a few customers turn their heads. And then, just as suddenly, the man left, disappearing into the storm. Daniel sat there for a moment, motionless, then finally got up and walked out the back door without noticing Emma. That night, Emma couldn't stand it anymore. She grabbed her phone and called Daniel. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Then, finally, a message arrived. Daniel meet me at the bridge. Midnight. The city was quiet when Emma reached the old pedestrian bridge. The river below was dark, almost black, reflecting the broken light of distant street lamps. She spotted Daniel leaning against the railing, hood up, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "You came," he said softly, without turning around. "You asked me to," she replied. "Now tell me what's going on." He exhaled, his breath visible in the cold air. "The man from the cafe," Daniel began, "works for someone I used to know in New York. His name's Cole. We were business partners until I found out he was laundering money. I wanted out. He didn't like that." Emma frowned, crossing her arms. "So you just ran away?" "I had no choice," Daniel said sharply. "When Cole's fiancée died in a car crash, he blamed me, said it was my fault. Since then, He's been following me. Emma's chest tightened. Daniel, this is insane. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want you involved, he said, finally turning to face her. His eyes were stormy, full of guilt and fear. But now it's too late. If Cole knows about you. A sudden noise cut through the night, the crunch of footsteps on wet pavement. Daniel grabbed Emma's hand. Run! They sprinted across the bridge as shadows moved behind them. Emma's lungs burned, her heart racing. She heard voices shouting, footsteps pounding, the sound of tires screeching somewhere nearby. Daniel pulled her into a narrow alley, pressing her against the cold brick wall, both of them gasping for breath. We can't stay here, he whispered. They know where I am now. Emma clutched his arm, trembling. Daniel, what do they want? He hesitated, then looked straight into her eyes. Me. Before she could respond, a black car turned the corner, headlights blinding them. Doors opened, heavy boots hit the pavement. Daniel stepped in front of Emma, his body tense, ready. Stay behind me, he murmured. Episode 3, The Trial. When fate tests your love, every heartbeat matters. Rain hammered against the pavement, drowning out everything but the pounding of Emma's heartbeat. The black car's headlights blinded her as its doors slammed open and two men stepped out, tall, broad, and dressed in dark jackets. Daniel's hand tightened around hers. Run, he whispered again. They sprinted into the maze of narrow streets, Daniel leading her like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Emma's lungs burned, every step splashing water beneath her feet. Behind them, heavy footsteps pounded the ground, shouts cutting through the night. Faster, Emma, Daniel urged, his voice sharp. They turned a corner, only to find another car blocking the street. Daniel cursed under his breath, yanking her into a side alley so narrow they had to squeeze between the wet brick walls. The rain made everything slick and dangerous. Emma nearly slipped twice, but Daniel's grip kept her steady. Finally, he pushed open a rusted door, pulling her inside. The room was dark, damp, and smelled like mold. Broken shells lined the walls, and the single flickering light bulb buzzed weakly overhead. Daniel pressed his ear against the door, holding his breath. Outside, the men's footsteps grew louder, then slowly faded. Emma leaned against the wall, panting. Who are these people? Daniel, what do they want? He turned, running a hand through his wet hair. They work for Cole. He's not going to stop until I'm either back under his control or dead. Emma froze. Dead? Daniel met her gaze, his eyes hard, shadowed. I told you before, I walked away from something dangerous. Cole doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. Then why involve me? Her voice cracked. Why did you even talk to me that day at the cafe? For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Daniel looked away, his jaw clenched, then said quietly, because I couldn't help it. Emma's breath caught. I told myself I'd stay invisible. Daniel continued, his voice rough. No friends, no connections, nothing that Cole could use against me. And then you appeared, with your notebook, your sarcasm, your everything, and suddenly, I didn't care about being invisible anymore. Emma felt something shift inside her, something terrifying and warm all at once. But before she could respond, glass shattered somewhere nearby. Daniel grabbed her hand again. We need to move. They slipped out the back of the building and into another alley. The rain had slowed to a drizzle now, but the night felt heavier than before. Every distant engine, every creak of metal made Emma's skin crawl. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. Safe? She scoffed. With guys chasing us through half the city. I'm not sure that exists. Daniel gave a small, humorless smile. You're not wrong. Finally, after what felt like forever, they reached an abandoned train station. The walls were covered in graffiti. The tracks rusted and silent. Daniel led her down a set of stairs into a hidden maintenance room. "This'll do," he said, bolting the door behind them. Emma sat on an old crate, hugging her knees to her chest. Her soaked clothes clung to her skin, and her entire body trembled from adrenaline. Daniel knelt in front of her, his voice soft now. "I know you didn't ask for any of this, Emma. I should have stayed away. I wanted to." But he hesitated, then met her eyes. "I don't regret meeting you." Her throat tightened. "Even if it gets us both killed?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. For a brief moment, silence filled the room, heavy, fragile, intimate. Then a phone buzzed. Daniel stiffened, pulling it from his pocket. Unknown number. One message. He opened it and froze. Emma leaned forward. "What is it?" Daniel turned the screen toward her. "Unknown number. You can't run forever. Check the news." Emma frowned, confused, until Daniel opened the browser and pulled up the latest headline. Breaking news. Police investigating explosion at London cafe, 2 injured. Emma's breath hitched. "Daniel, that's our cafe." His jaw tightened. Cole sending a message. Before she could respond, the maintenance room's door rattled violently. Someone was trying to break in. Daniel shoved his phone into his pocket, grabbed Emma's hand, and whispered urgently, "No matter what happens, stay close to me." The lock clicked, the door burst open. 3 men stepped inside. Episode 4, Between Two Heartbeats. One choice, one moment, everything on the line. The door slammed open. 3 men stormed into the maintenance room, their faces cold, their movements sharp and calculated. Daniel instantly shoved Emma behind him, his body tense like a spring ready to snap. "Daniel Kane," the tallest one said, his voice low and steady. "Mr. Cole wants a word." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Tell Cole he'll have to come himself." The man smirked. "Oh, he will." But first, he glanced at Emma. "She comes with us." Emma's breath caught. Daniel stepped forward. "She's got nothing to do with this." "That's where you're wrong," the man replied calmly. "She's leverage." Before Daniel could react, the other 2 lunged. One grabbed Emma's arm. She screamed, kicking wildly. The other swung at Daniel, but Daniel blocked, twisting his attacker's wrist and shoving him into the wall. "Emma, run!" he shouted. But she couldn't. The third man's grip was like steel. Daniel turned, fury flashing in his eyes. He threw a punch so hard the man staggered back, releasing her. Without hesitating, Daniel grabbed her hand, and they bolted out the back door. The old train station echoed with their footsteps. Behind them, shouts and heavy boots chased them through the darkness. Daniel led her through a narrow tunnel, his hand gripping hers so tightly it almost hurt. "They won't stop," Emma panted, her voice shaking. "No," he said, breathless. "Not until Cole gets what he wants." "And what does he want?" "Me." They reached the other side of the tunnel, where the rain hit their faces like icy needles. A black SUV screeched around the corner, cutting them off. "Get in the car, Kane," a voice shouted from the open window. Daniel glanced around desperately, then spotted an old metal staircase leading up to a rooftop. "This way!" They scrambled up, their wet shoes slipping on the rusted steps. By the time they reached the top, Daniel was already scanning for an escape. But the rooftop had no exit. Just a 3-story drop to the street below. Emma turned to him, panic in her eyes. "We're trapped." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Not yet." The door behind them burst open, and Cole stepped out. He looked exactly as Daniel had described, sharp suit, colder than winter, eyes like polished glass. "Well," Cole said, his voice smooth as silk, you've made me chase you halfway across London. You still run as fast as you lie." Daniel stepped forward, shielding Emma behind him. "It doesn't have to be like this." Cole tilted his head, almost amused. "You stole from me, Daniel. You walked away. And now you think you get to choose how this ends." "I didn't steal anything," Daniel shot back. "I found out what you were doing. Laundering money. Funding gangs. People died because of you." Cole's calm mask cracked for the first time. "Careful," he hissed. "Or she dies next." Emma felt Daniel's hand tighten slightly behind him. "You want me?" Daniel said, stepping forward. "Then take me. But let her go." Cole studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. The two men behind Cole moved toward Emma. She panicked, clutching Daniel's arm. "No," Daniel whispered quickly. "Trust me." Suddenly, Daniel yanked Emma forward, spinning her behind his back and shoving her toward the edge of the rooftop. "Jump," he said sharply. Emma's eyes widened. "Are you insane? It's a storage awning. It'll hold. Trust me, Emma." "Jump." She hesitated for only a second, then leapt. The awning groaned under her weight but didn't break. Emma rolled off, landing on the wet pavement below with a painful thud. Above her, Daniel turned back to face Cole and his men. "This ends now," he said, his voice low. "It happened fast." One of Cole's men lunged. Daniel ducked, striking hard. The other swung at him, but Daniel kicked his legs out from under him. Finally, it was just Daniel and Cole. "You should have stayed gone," Cole growled. "You should have stayed human," Daniel spat back. Cole threw the first punch. Daniel blocked, countering with one of his own. They fought fiercely, years of anger and betrayal exploding in every movement. Then, sirens. Red and blue lights flashed against the wet walls below. Police flooded the street, weapons drawn. Cole froze. For the first time, he looked afraid. Daniel stepped back, chest heaving. "It's over, Cole." Hours later, as dawn broke over London, Daniel and Emma sat on the steps outside a police station, wrapped in blankets. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the pale morning light. Emma leaned against him, exhausted but safe. "So," she said softly, "is this where you disappear again?" Daniel looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "Not unless you want me to." She shook her head. "Not a chance." He exhaled, relief flickering in his eyes. "Then I'm staying." 6 months later, the cafe where they first met reopened after renovations. Emma sat by the window, sketching in her notebook, when Daniel walked in carrying 2 coffees. "Déjà vu," she teased. He set one cup in front of her, leaning down so their faces were inches apart. "This time," he said softly, "no more running. No more secrets." Emma smiled. "Promise?" "Promise." He kissed her then, gently, like the world had finally stopped spinning. And in that quiet moment, between 2 heartbeats, they found forever. Subscribe and like so you don't miss the next shocking story. Thank you for watching.